All right, here we go. I think we got it live. Okay, I am now live. Here we go. Thank you. All right, good evening, and good evening. Welcome, welcome, welcome to another episode of the Kiss Corner. This is Cassandra Williams, aka Coach Kiss, mwah, and I welcome you this evening again to another episode again of the Kiss Corner. If you are new to the show, again, I welcome you and let me give you just a little bit of background. This was created as a safe space for women in particular who, like me, have left toxic relationships and are now ready to develop, if you will, themselves. And just kind of rise to that next level, right? Coming out of letting go of that toxicity and the routines that you've developed and surviving within that. And like I said, elevating essentially to a higher version of yourself. And so that is the cornerstone of the. I welcome you with me this evening. If you've been rocking with me, I thank you. Go ahead. If you're seeing me in Facebook, give me those likes, those love, those care. And if you catch me on the Empowered Voices Network on YouTube, again, subscribe, like, comment, and share. Please, please, and thank you. All right. So without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get us stay before you too long. Um, so, like I said, I'm your host, Cassandra M. Williams, aka Coach Kiss. Mwah. And tonight, this episode is, I'm on what's happening, right? And so this episode is for the one who's tired of being strong. Um, perhaps the one who made the brave choice but is wondering why the blessing still feels heavy. Like you barely holding on, right? So that's what I'm talking to this evening. And so tonight's episode is titled What's for Me is Still for Me, Even in the Fog. And like I said, I'm speaking to where I am right now. I laugh now in jest, not that it's really funny per se, um, but let's just get into it, right? Uh, the reality of things as I've been contemplating them lately is this is what I'm feeling, right? I'm 48. I have three beautifully amazing children. And right now we are living in my mom's living room. My youngest and I each have a couch to sleep on. And my oldest two share an air mattress. And, all in all, we're making it work. And I am not ashamed of it at all. I am grateful that my mom has shown up in ways that continue to bless and humble me and my children. And it doesn't make it easy. And I'm just speaking my truth, right? Some days it hurts and not the a place to come to because I left a toxic space. But just the retrospect of wow, like I should be than this, right? At some point, I had much more than this on my own. And I don't mean it in terms of just things, but I think just a level of independence, right? That you come and I always felt very, very independent and confident in myself in that and proud of myself, quite frankly. Um, of being able to step away from home and take care of myself and be in a position where, if the tables are turned, then I can assist my mom, when my dad was still living, that I would be in a position to be able to assist him when and as needed, as well as the rest of my family, again, as needed. And I've played those roles a lot in my life. And so now being more or less like on the receiving end because I need it, it's humbling, right? And like I said, sometimes it hurts. And so it hurts when simple things that I used to be able to provide seamless. It's like I have to weigh against the odds, and it's not today. Why? You know, because I don't want them to think that it's just me. And don't get me wrong, it's not that every single request that comes out their mouth is honored. They do know that there are things that they have to earn. But, the kids, right? I just sometimes just leisure things that kids want. And I've been able up until this last year and a half or so. And then the strings really, really tightened up in these last couple of months. And so it hurts, to be in this position. Like I said, especially after building a life and a career path that was stable to some degree. But like I said, I didn't just fall into where I am now. And I'm thankful and eternally, like I said, grateful for where I am because I had to make the choice to leave. I removed myself and my children from a very toxic environment. It was bad and so I left for the sake of peace, of course, for our mental health and for our emotional safety. And so essentially for our future, that's not to say that their dad is cut off parenting separately and what have you, but definitely better for the wear without being exclusive to each other in our lives. So while I know that for those really did the right thing and made the right choice, this pivot, because I know it's not been easy. It's not glamorous. There's no applause, no do I, but there is obedience. And sometimes I'm finding it looks like instability, like one. And then there's work, right? Again, eternally grateful for all that God has provided for me, even when I have my moments where I feel like, is it provision? What is this? Those doubts start to creep in, and I definitely have to beat them back because I know without a shadow of a doubt that where I am and what I have at this stage is most definitely divine because there's no way I could have planned it in the way that it has unfolded. And so today, um, I was, we're in testing week. I teach second grade for those of you who may not know. And I've been teaching for this is my 23rd year. Um, but mostly so grades 6, 7, and 8, and then within that. And so stepping back into this arena of elementary school, when I first started, I was a first grade teacher. And, I agreed to base of teaching second grade and I teach at my children. There's again a lot of divine connection in this, right? And so a little bit and they'll be testing again in about 2 weeks for another test, to measure and see their level of growth and proficiency in a year. And when I saw kind of the of how my students performed and was able to compare it to their last performance a couple of months back, it looked fairly good, right? I knew that I had not yet gone back to take a look at the aggregate results. Some of my kids were absent, and I preferred to really just kind of see the blanketed picture all at once. And so I was like, no big deal. Once these few take theirs between tomorrow and perhaps Monday, I'll go in and I'll pull up everything and I'll be able to see, in its totality. Well, I'm walking down the hallway today. I run into my principal and I'm like, hey, they were looking pretty good. And she was like, I'm like, yeah. She's like, no. I'm like, come again. Me? She's like, yeah, no, they're really not looking that great. And so we go into our office and their, for second grade, like their proficiency score, if you will, only came up to 25%. And she's like, yeah, this score has to be at least. And when I say that, guys, I'm first for me that with the school that the network that I'm working with, there's merit pay at the end of the year. I've never had to go through that before. And so to see this was like deafening. It really was. Um, for multiple reasons, right? I know that that number doesn't represent a full picture of their growth because I know that they have grown. I can hear it in their questions. I can see it in their level of confidence. I can see it in their work. I can hear it in their reading, it in the responses that I'm getting back from many of their families as to what changes and progress that they see their scholars making at home. That number on paper was a gut punch. And I tried to hold it in. My students were outside playing, taking a break from the 10 and 8 years old. And so I bring back in, I'm situated for dismissal. And as I'm sitting there and they're getting settled, and I put on a video for them, and I'm just to kind of keep my head down a bit. And I'm tears, and seeing them wasn't helping because looking at that paper and reading those results made me feel like I failed them, which of course is never the goal, never the intent. I've worked with a small group of them for the last 6 weeks, 3 days a week. The students who I knew needed that additional support and that additional pour in. And as I'm testing them from their in their post test compared to their pre test, it's taking me a little bit longer to do because they're able to progress further in their testing this later than what they were able to do prior to, because I'm giving them the exact same test. And so as I'm looking at this paper, it looks fairly good for so many of the other grades in the school. It's a K to 8. And I've been doing this for 23 years. And so, yeah, it feels personal. it feels like a reflection on me. um, and it feels like another area where it's like, oh, just not enough, right? And then I started questioning, like, should I have taken this position? Was this real for me? All things, the doubts. You know, was I qualified enough to really take on this particular position? And so my principal, as I'm standing in front of her, and she's like, don't worry. She's like, I think we got a solution. She's like, I know some of those kids, they test well in different types of environment. They were all together and they really need to be in a smaller group. Now it's only 20 of them. She's like, but I know for a fact, having had some of them here starting, they do better. And she's like, so we're going to retest them. We're going to give them a break, but we're going to go at it again. She's like, I know the work the work that they've put in. I've seen the growth of student time that they've been here to what they've been able to do at this point. She's like, and maybe some of them are just not the best at test taking, whatever it is. She's like, but we're going to go at, I know for a fact that as I'm looking at these results for some of these students, this truly does not really represent who they are and what they've been capable of doing over the course. And while I am graciously accepting the redo, if you will, it still didn't necessarily make the pot any sweeter, right? Because in that moment, and I'm still pushing through it, I still felt like I failed them, you know? Um, and so I've had to sit with the thought of, if I'm giving my all, why doesn't it look like it's enough? And maybe you've asked that question too. I don't think I'm a big crier. Um, I'm deeply impacted about things that I'm passionate about. So it doesn't feel good. And so this was at about 3 o'clock this afternoon. 5 is fresh. um, but here's what I've had to remind myself of, right? And what I'm here to remind you of as well. That just because you're in a fog doesn't mean that you failed. Just because it's slow doesn't mean that you're stuck. And just because it hurts doesn't mean that you're still held, or that you're not still held, rather. What's for you is still yours. What's for you is still yours. Even if your kids sleep on an air mattress right now, even if the page is much smaller than what it used to be, even if your progress doesn't show up it should on spreadsheets and data, not behind, but you're being built. Process of building, if you've ever seen the construction of a building, the end result of it can look phenomenal, right? But when you see the process of it, you see bare bones. You see the skeleton of what is to come. And sometimes in seeing those places and those pieces, you can't fathom, you can't begin to imagine what that end result is really going to look like, even though what a building looks like, what a house looks like. So you have a general idea of what that end result is, but you don't necessarily see it in the moment. And so, you can walk away from something that's no longer serving you and still feel lost. You can follow peace and still feel broke. You can protect your children and still cry in the dark because it feels like it's too much. But what I know deep in my bones is that what's for you is for you, and it will not pass you. Even if it's taking a little longer, even if you don't see it yet, even if you're walking through it with trembling hands and a tired heart and a weary spirit, you're still on assignment and you're still walking in purpose. And your story isn't over. And so I really want you to ask yourself, as I'm asking myself, right? We're in this together. Giving myself grace for where I am, or is it guilt? Illness with failure. Am I comparing my pace? Because comparison is a liar for sure, right? Mode for so long, you might not even recognize how much progress you've made. And so just the simple reminders of it to bring you back to center, that you're here because somebody that thought they were going to be here and wanted to be here didn't wake up this morning to be here. And so with that being said, you're breathing, you're loving yourself, you're loving your babies, you're showing up for your students, you're navigating debt and dreams and delays and disappointments, and still giving God a yes. And that's not weak. And so if no one else has told you, I see you, I honor you, and you are not alone. So as I prepare to close out this episode tonight, I hope that this has resonated, that what's for you, even in the fog. And what happens in the fog when it's dense and it's low and it feels unfamiliar. So God, that you don't know and you can't see. So what would a shift in your life look like if we firmly believe that we are in a divine direction, right? That is not movement, but that it's a journey with a purpose that we're living. Are we by somebody else's timeline or by the truth of our own journey? And if you trusted, How would you show up tomorrow? Because that's the question. Lick my wounds today, but I got to show up tomorrow strong and ready to move forward no matter what. And so do you. And so can you, right? We can do this. It doesn't feel great, but it can be done. And so, while I know that this season is uncomfortable, I know it's easy and it's quiet all at the same time. And I think I've been speaking a lot to that this month. And I've also been speaking in the process of becoming, right? That we are protected and that we are still called for the purpose of which we are here. And so this isn't the end of anything. It's simply that messy middle. But I'm right here with you, walking it out, literally. And we're going to make it. That's make it, and we're going to make it together. And so I thank you for your time this evening. Again, please feel free to share with anyone or replay for yourself if it's you, right? If this has really resonated with you in some way. Because we definitely have to stay grounded and stay growing, right? And keep kissing fears and doubts goodbye. So, again, if this episode spoke to you, spoke to your soul, it resonated, share it, keep it for yourself, and share it with someone that you love. Tag me if you can. Again, give us those comments, give us those likes, those subscribe and comment, because we're here, we're sharing. It's real. I'm going to keep this community real and raw and rooted in truth. So take care and be well as you elevate along your healing journey. Coach Kiss. Mwah. You have experienced this evening the Kiss Corner. I thank you for your time. I thank you for your love. I thank you for your support. And I will see you next week, next Thursday, 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. Same back time, same back station. Again, I thank you and have a good night.